Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I wanted to get on today and talk about relationship burnout and the question of what are we really fighting about? And if you do a Google search of what most couples fight about, what comes up is sex, money, and parenting. And those are all things that we fight about and more. Like there's way more to that. Couples are fighting about the division of labor in their households. They're fighting about time spent pursuing other activities and not, being home or, there's lots of things that couples fight about. And what I really want um, to get to the root of is what we're actually fighting about. And that's not always the easy thing. So the surface fight is about money or sex or parenting. And I would say that those are symptoms. Those are the symptoms that are showing up in your relationship that are showing you that there's other things at play. So there might be some developmental trauma that needs to be dealt with, cultural beliefs. There's, different life experiences that shape our feelings and thoughts on different subjects. And so it's often more than just about the topic at hand or the moment. And it often goes back to, our own childhood and our own upbringing, both in our household on a sort of a micro level, but then society as a whole. And so looking at it from a more macro level. So there's a lot to consider, but I would like to just sort of have you consider that it's not just about the thing that you think you're fighting about. Excuse me, there's usually more to it. There's a person that's maybe feeling unheard. There's a person who feels unloved. There's a person who feels misunderstood. There's a person who is in fight or flight mode. There's a person who lacks the skills to communicate what they're feeling. There's a person who's maybe dissociating within that argument. So there's a lot going on besides just who's going to feed the dog, or you didn't take the garbage out, or I need more help with the kids, or you spend too much time on the video games, or any number of things that are coming up for couples. It's not just about those things, right? And so when we can get to that place of understanding that it's not about that, then we can do some inquiry around it, and then we can do some healing around it. So the underlying feelings that are coming up for that person often go back further, and there's a pattern of these situations and relationships in their life that continually perpetuated that or reinforced that for them. So to really get in touch with how to heal within a couple or within a family dynamic, the work really has to be done individually to start, in my opinion, and then through that inquiry and that healing, we can now be in a place where we can actually utilize tools for better communication. So if we're constantly in a triggered state within arguments and disagreements with our loved ones, it's really hard to validate. It's hard to negotiate. It's hard to practice active listening. It's really hard to stay present, to be able to know not only what's being triggered in me, but maybe even having enough empathy to recognize maybe what's being triggered inside of them. And you don't have to be a psychologist or a therapist in order to learn these tools. Some of them can be learned through mindfulness practices, and we can utilize mindfulness practices in our everyday lives to gain the perspective that we need, or to gain a little bit of pause or distance to be able to see more sides to the story than just what's being triggered within our own self. And also, having done some therapy to work on ourselves, we can then utilize the skills of mindfulness and pausing much more easily, because we've now not only taken care of the root cause of what's being triggered in us, healed those parts of ourselves, we gain a better understanding of just how much we do control our response to things, and that can be very empowering. So if you find that you're constantly fighting or bickering, and it doesn't have to be about the same topics, if you just reached a place in your relationship where the communication is completely broken down, and either you're not able to communicate effectively through words and action, or vice versa, you've gone to complete silent mode and you're not communicating at all, those are just symptoms of your issues, and the symptoms are going to be different for each person, the causes are going to be different for each person being triggered in these high emotion interactions are going to be different for every person. So while I might feel triggered in a relation, in an argument where it brings feelings of I'm unheard, or that what I'm saying is not respected or given the way that it deserves, I do some inquiry around that. So that's what I'm able to observe in myself, that I feel unheard. Where in my life have I felt unheard? Where does this come from? Because it may or may not be a particular situation. So your partner may possess the necessary to validate you, still maybe you don't feel validated, or they don't possess the skills and you're feeling heard, and maybe not being able to clearly articulate that to them. Like, that's the sort of thing that you can work on in therapeutic setting, and that you can gain a lot of introspection and insight in a healing relationship with someone else who's able to hold space for you and allow for inquiry to happen in a safe manner. So that as you start to do inquiry, a lot of times things come up that can be really disturbing, upsetting to us, in the realizations of where did it begin. There can be a lot of pain and negative emotion surrounding that need to be worked through. And so if you're doing some inquiry on your own, you're doing some mindfulness practice and having a lot of stuff come up and you're not quite sure how to manage those situations and feelings that come up, then that would be a great opportunity to seek out someone who can provide that safety and container to help you. Where I distinguish between sort of the work that I do with people that are therapeutic and transformational, and then that I do that's more coaching and are going to build skills such as mindfulness and whatnot. So they're two separate approaches, but they work well together. And when you reach sort of a level of relation and ability to manage the responses you're having on a physiological level and on the emotional level, it does it easier to then implement other skills and other resources to your life. So the transformation can happen within the therapy session, and then that free person up and seek out other ways and tools that they add in that are help reinforce and help build that he often take that root cause healing work to get to a place where you can use those skills. You know, the flip side, you know, sometimes those resources of individual one aren't always available in the case that you can from a mindfulness practice can be, you know, really beneficial. But I just always that cat if you get to a place where you're stuck, really, you're not having the sort of breakthrough that you're needing to have, that breakthrough. Uh, that that could be the need to do that one-on-one with. So I invite you out if you're feeling your relationship is wrong, and you're feeling unsure what next. I invite you to me. Feel free to private message me. I usually get back to people quickly. Sometimes that's not possible if I'm in with or dealing with family stuff. Try to get to people quickly and go off free 40-minute consult call. You can kind of get an idea of what's going on for you, and then the next steps to you back to feeling, you know, instant, capable of, you know, life and you know, those connect with our lives. I hope this help you all. Fantastic. Thank you for me.